He has done it all: journalist, humorist, novelist, even actor. But mostly he has entertained and informed an entire generation of readers. From his work in Time magazine, a regular column in The New Yorker, and his comic verses in The Nation, he has shared his views on everything from politics to food. Hello, I'm Ernie Manouse. Coming up on InnerVIEWS, our conversation with best-selling author Calvin Trillin. When you decide to write something of a personal nature, is there anything off limits?
Well, for me there is. I mean, some people don't think there is.
Should there be?
I've always thought you can say anything you want to about yourself, assuming you have a high embarrassment threshold. When it comes to other people, I use the what I call the Dostoevsky rule, because the argument is usually, well, you shouldn't say things that embarrass people or hurt people or something, and then the other side of the argument is, this is art, and you just have to do it. My sort of line there is, if you think you're another Dostoevsky, if you have reason to believe you're another Dostoevsky, then you should say anything you want, and in fact, you're almost obligated to. You just have to say that your mother once confessed to you in a moment of weakness that she never really loved your father, even if it makes things sort of awkward in the retirement village. But if you're not another Dostoevsky, you can't.
Yeah.
And I don't know many people who are under the impression that they're another Dostoevsky, I think.
Can we get to a sense of absolute truth without going into the details of everyday life?
Oh yeah, I think everybody, you always choose what you write about in the same way that if you tell a story, you choose what you tell. I mean, if someone asks you how you met your wife, you might go way back to why you lived in that city or what you were doing there, or you might just say you saw her across the room at a party, or you might talk about where she was in her life at that moment or something like that. I mean, we all pick details and how much to tell and how much to leave out, not for necessarily any reason of privacy or but just as a matter of what makes the story move along. So right. I think everybody does that. I think what's happened in memoir to a certain extent was that it got so, or maybe it is so in America now, that people who write memoirs often seem to think that they have to reveal something hideous in order to be heard.
Right.
So if you don't have at least some incest or a tiny bit of bestiality or something in your family, you're sort of stuck. And I was at a memoir sort of seminar. This was in what I call the January Dip in Airfares literary seminar in Key West, and they have different themes every year. And one year was memoir, and I acknowledged that, and in fact I had written it in a book, that I felt a terrible disadvantage in writing memoir because I wouldn't want this to go any further. We're just the two of us, I think. But I had a pretty happy childhood and pretty regular family. And this, I wish you wouldn't tell anybody. I had a good time in high school, and I wasn't even miserable, and there wasn't much to reveal. And I could imagine myself in the sort of bar where memoirists hung out, the memoir bar, and late at night, and these guys are telling some of the hideous secrets in their past that would just curl your hair, and they look at me and I say, well, there was my collie dog Chubby, and they look with great disdain, and I say, it's really true that we had a dog, a little collie when I was 3 or 4, named Chubby. My sister's about 1.5 years older than I am, and he was sickly, and one day he disappeared, and we said to our parents, "Where's Chubby?" And they said that Chubby had been sent to some friends who had a farm, and there he would be happy in the sunshine, gamboling and frolicking around the barnyard with the other animals. And I didn't think much about Chubby after that. And then some years later, Chubby's name came up at dinner. I think I was home from college, and I said, "Why didn't we ever go visit Chubby at the farm?" And my sister said, "There wasn't any farm, you dummy. Chubby had to be put away." And I said, "Chubby's gone?" And my mother said Chubby would probably be gone in any circumstance, since collies didn't usually live 18 or 20 years. And I said, "Yeah, but why am I just finding out now?" And my father said, "It's not our fault you're slow on the uptake." And then I put that in a book. And about a week after the book came out, my sister called me, and she said, "The collie was not called Chubby. The collie was called George. You were called Chubby." So, but such a mundane thing. I mean, I think that's what happened with what's his name, Fry. Basically, if you're a middle-class druggie, what's so horrible about that? I mean, they're a dime a dozen. Everybody knows a lot of middle-class druggies. And so, you have to be in jail, you have to be, have something horrible has to happen. And and I think that's where people get the idea that you have to say something awful about your family and things. It is difficult living with a writer in a house, I think, for that reason, among others. But sometimes I used to say, if my wife said something, I'd say, that was not off the record, what you said. And that was not on deep background. That was quotable. Then when I did write something about, I guess, kids and raising families and things, I was on a book tour and somebody said, "Are you worried that your daughters will write about you?" And I said, "No, I'm not worried at all, because when they were about 5 and 8, I had them sign a non-disclosure agreement. Nothing complicated, rather simple form that I think it's the same one Buckingham Palace uses for the servants."
Yeah.
And it said, "Just sign. Daddy wouldn't tell you anything that was wrong. Just sign your name, or if you can't write, put an X or something like that for the little one." But I think it's now sort of an industry where I think people who have stormy family lives just have to hope that not all the kids grow up to be carpenters or investment bankers or anything but writers.
Is there still an audience out there for a well-written book as opposed to a book that has a fabulous story?
Yeah, I think so. I think the publishing industry is a modest-sized industry. I mean, a book might get close to the bestseller list with 25 or 30,000 copies, something like that, depending on the way things fell at the stores and which week it was and all of that. So we're really not talking about huge numbers. I mean, you read about the Da Vinci Code selling 40 million or something, but I can assure you, as a long-time itinerant loss leader in the publishing industry, that that's not the normal experience of writers. I think that that from everything I read, that what's sometimes called the mid-list book, which is the well-written, often what they sometimes call literary novel, that is, it doesn't have anything that can be made into a car chase or anything like that. I think it's having a more difficult time being published now than it used to. It used to be that publishing houses publish those books in the hope that person would sooner or later come up with something that sold more, and meanwhile it sort of enhanced the reputation of the publishing house. But it's getting to be more like a business, more like a Hollywood business than it was, and even years ago I always said that the average shelf life of a trade book in America is somewhere between milk and yogurt. So if it doesn't sell right away, it's not going to sell.
Now, I always hate asking questions like these because I'm never sure this information is right. But I'll ask, you were in a couple of films?
Oh, yes. I'm surprised that you're not sure of that. Yes, I had quite a distinguished career in the films. I shouldn't say had. I mean, I could still
You're still available.
I'm available. And I have to say I haven't had many calls lately. I played, I was in Sleepless in Seattle. I played a man named, I don't know why he was named that, because you never heard his name, I don't think, but I think his name was Uncle Milton. And I was at you had to get in early at Sleepless in Seattle to see me. I was in the scene when Meg Ryan brings her boyfriend home at Christmas to meet the family at the dinner table. Said a few words. Then I had what I thought was a splendid scene where I was teaching the kids after Christmas dinner. We were sitting up on a landing, and I was teaching them how to bark like a dog. That scene was cut. In fact, the kids were cut. The children's table didn't end up in the movie. And then the director made another movie, which took place also around Christmas, and I said, hey, just put this. It had just as much to do with this movie as the other movie, but she didn't think so. Then I was a sheriff in Michael, and I really got into that role. I had several months to prepare, and every morning I would look at the creed of the Texas Rangers, which happened to be on my bulletin board already, and to try to get into a law enforcement frame of mind. Creed of the Texas Rangers is, no man in the wrong can stand up against a man that's in the right and keeps on a-comin'. And I would read that every day. And so by the time I walked onto the sound set in my sheriff's costume, the director, who I'd known for 30 years or so, which is the reason I was in the movies, actually thought maybe one of the vans had been parked illegally and some law enforcement person.
That's believable.
That believable. I believe the phrase would be inhabited the character. Yes. Yeah.
So what made that a curiosity for you? Why did you go and do that?
Well, it was the director was a friend of mine, and I actually was supposed to be in another one of her movies, and something happened and I was off on a story or something when the time to shoot. They fell behind on the schedule, and I pointed out to her that when I was in the movie tended to be a successful movie, and actually, I guess as a joke, I don't know, I never talked to the guy, but the theater in Seattle near the University of Washington, on the marquee said, Meg Ryan and Calvin Trillin in Sleepless in Seattle. So I did get star billing at least in one
theater.
Yeah. I just thought it would be sort of fun.
Yeah. Are there certain things that you look at in a career that you still want to accomplish? Are there those certain pearls, or have you lived the career you want?
Well, It's hard to say that I've lived the career I wanted to because I wasn't sure ever where I was going, and things tended just to come along, and I really couldn't have predicted. It's not like somebody saying I really want to get to the major leagues or I want to be a Wall Street mogul who makes $1 million or something. I didn't have. I think most of the people of my age kind of backed into journalism or whatever this is called, and then the fact that I did it in sort of an odd way and do other do verse and kind of light writing and relatively serious writing, I think was just sort of accidental things came up. So I don't know, if you said, is there anything you'd like to write that you haven't written? Sure, I would like to write the lyrics for a Broadway musical, but really? Nobody has asked so far.
Well, they might now that you've put it out there.
Yeah, I'll wait quietly. I'll sort of like singing in the shower, hoping to be discovered.
How different is it writing about food to politics? Are they similar in the way you approach it?
No. Well, both of them are sort of sidelines in a way. Most of the things I've written in my life have been relatively straight reporting, and I usually don't write about politics in those stories. And these would be mainly for the New Yorker. I spent 15 years doing a piece every 3 weeks for the New Yorker around the country, and I might have covered one or two campaigns, but only because there was some issue in the campaign or something. Also, I never wrote until the campaign was over, so I was always right about the winner. And that was partly to avoid about 80% of American political writing is, oddly enough, about who's going to win, which is something we're all going to know on election night. Even if the reporters are all death rate before that, we're still going to know. And so usually the political writing has been commentary rather than reporting. Mm-hmm. I did a column for about 20 years, first for The Nation and then syndication, and then for Time Magazine for about 5 years. And I still do a verse every week for The Nation, and that's where most of the political commentary comes. And the book that's about to come out, which is called A Heck of a Job, is the second book of verse I've written on the Bush administration. Mm-hmm. But I would never. I've never done any serious reporting on the Bush administration. So. And writing about eating came about as a sort of comic relief when I was doing these pieces around the country. I realized that at some point I would get tired of writing about controversies or murders or disputes of one sort or another, and that I could write lighter pieces about the country by going to the Brobridge Crawfish Festival or writing about how people in Cincinnati think that chili is a Cincinnati dish made by Greeks and Macedonians, and so the food writing's always been sort of a sideline, and almost in the way somebody has a hobby. I mean, in the sense that I'm totally. I don't know anything about food. I don't cook, and I have no expertise in it at all. I've tried to convince people that for years, and I still get asked, well, what's the third best French restaurant in Chicago? I have no idea.
People love to rank things, don't they?
That's true, what's a true beef Wellington? I just don't know. I don't know anything about it. So it was a way. It started out as a way to get a lighter piece in the midst of a lot of heavy pieces, not so much for the readers, but for me, and just a sort of a relaxing thing. It's easy to write about. Yeah. At least for me, and also it's a way of writing about the country or telling jokes or something. I never thought of it as writing about food in the way what my family calls grown-up food writers do, where they actually know something about it and tell you about how it was made and where it comes from and all that.
Now, I know on 9/11, a lot happened for everyone, but you
Right.
had a special tragedy also at that time. You lost your wife on the same day.
Right.
Can you look at that time? Can you see what happened at that time and see everything else that happened away from what happened for you personally, or is all of it tied together?
My wife died that night. I mean, technically she died after midnight, so technically she died the next morning. I guess I saw it as a distraction mainly when it was happening, and I've never been down there. I've never looked at it, and it wasn't exactly all tied up in the sense that if your wife dies, it really doesn't make a whole lot of difference in what's happening in the world.
And it wasn't related to 9/11
No,
anyway.
no,
Right.
no, and it was in the other part of the city. I mean, I could see it from my house, but I live in the village, and it's quite close. But at the time, it just meant it was hard for me to get around and get up to see her. She was in the hospital when it happened. And I guess there's a constant reminder from that, but there isn't any good time to have your wife die. So in that sense, it didn't make any difference.
Did it take a while for you to get back to writing like you after having an experience like that?
Yeah. I've never been somebody who had serious trouble writing, with the exception of the time my wife was sick originally in '76. And as soon as she got back from the hospital, I was okay and I could write. I've always thought that one of the reasons writers are so weird in a lot of ways is that when they have trouble in their lives, then they have sort of double trouble because they also can't write usually, or often. And I thought that it was important for me to get back to work, which I did, I guess, a couple of months later, but with a sort of serious reporting story in Canada that took a lot of interviewing and looking for documents and excuse me, and I guess I wasn't sure whether I was ever going to write anything that was meant to be funny again, but eventually I did.
Yeah. Do you see a difference in your work today than the work you wrote back at the beginning of your career?
Well, it's not as good because she's not there to look at it, and she was well, not just the first reader, the only reader until I handed it in. So I don't have that, but as far as subject matter, no.
Yeah.
It's pretty much the same mix of things.
What for you is the most joyful to write? Is it the prose? Is it the poetry? What do you like? Is it the investigative?
There's at least for me a great satisfaction in writing about something where you think, well, I've actually figured that out, and that tends to be a piece of at least enough length so that you can figure it out, and made some sort of sense out of it, and it's kind of written so that it goes from one paragraph to the other. Okay. I have fun writing the verse, particularly if there's an odd rhyme or if we can rhyme Alberto Gonzalez with loyal über alles, There's great satisfaction in that.
You made it work.
Yeah, you made it work, or somebody made it work. And I don't like politicians who have names that don't rhyme well. I mean, there are a lot of. My guy was really Ross Perot, because it was an iambic candidate, and the O sound is a good rhyme. And I don't know if you were aware of this, living in Texas, but Ross Perot's family's name used to be, before he went to the Naval Academy, Perot, which sounds a little more country than Perot.
Right.
You can sort of hear the sheriff saying to the deputy, better go check out at the Dewdrop Inn, because a bunch of them Perots are out there. You know how they get late at night. But he became Perot, much to my delight, since Ross Perot is a good name. I actually like the change. I like stopping a long piece for the New Yorker or something on Sunday night, and setting the shower to iambic pentameter or something, and writing the poem, or used to stop and write the column. And I like sort of the mix, which is when I first started at Time. I first started at Time as a reporter in the South. It was then a kind of a split system where there were writers in New York and reporters out of New York. And when I first started as a writer, I was what was called a floater. So I went from one section to the other as somebody went on vacation or got sick or something. And I loved that. I loved getting doing show business one week and art the next week. And I hated it when sometimes I'd get stuck in a section.
Well, I hate that I'm going to have to stop you here because we are out of time. But my very last question, because you've got me intrigued, what would the musical be about that you'd like to write?
Oh, well, that's a good question. I would say probably Texas television interviewing. I think
I love that one.
You could be the star.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Calvin Trillin.
To order a transcript, call 866-652-3378 or send $6.95 to the address on your screen. Please include the name of the guest.